is there? You think so? Okay, well, I'll bring to order the City of Cannon Falls Planning Commission meeting for Monday, January 14th. And we'll have a roll call. Daniels. Gesme.
Here.
Emma, I'm here. Lundell.
Here.
Other Lundell, not here. Pid. And we got Witt with us.
Here.
Okay, we'll approval of the agenda. Any changes on the agenda? Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah. Approval of the agenda has been approved. Approval of the minutes for December 10th, 2018. Questions there?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Approved and seconded by Lundell and Witt. Okay, so we'll have public input. Anybody that what's that?
We don't have to vote?
On the approval of the minutes?
Yeah.
You want to vote? Yeah, we'll vote on the minutes. All
in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Go fast here. Okay, public input. Any citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. If you have an issue, please approach the microphone and give your name and address for the record, and we'll limit those comments to 3 minutes. Any public input? Okay. We'll move on to the public hearing on conditional use permit of the Cannon Mall storage, and do you say that Purette? Purette.
Yes.
I'm not French.
It has changed. No, it's not French. I'm told.
Does it depend on where the E is?
I don't know.
It's German. Okay, well, whatever. Okay.
All right. So we are here today mostly for this public hearing on the Cannon Mall mini self-storage facility that is proposed by Cannon Falls Mall, Inc. These units are proposed to be built on the southern side of the mall. Included in your packet were some photos, some information from the owner, Mr. Reimer, and some zoning information. Mini storage units, the use requires a conditional use permit. So it's not the structures. We can talk about the placement of the structures if we want tonight, or anything like that, but it is the use that we are granting a conditional use permit for. So with that said, I'll invite anyone who would like to comment up for the public hearing.
Everybody, my name's Jim Burkhart. I'm not really here as an attorney this evening. I'm here on behalf of Ed Reimer. He's a snowbird down in Florida, and he's talked to me and he's talked to Sam about this. He didn't understand that he needed a permit. The units are there already, as you may have noticed, and for that he apologizes. He has storage units there, you know, in the back of the mall by the highway. They're stick-built storage units, and it didn't cross his mind that he had to have these for these units. He just wanted me to make a few general comments, not in the legal sense, but in the practical sense. And I won't take a lot of time, but as perhaps all of you know, the mall was built when it was outside the city limits. And it was built according to Cannon Falls Township Code at the time and Goodhue County Code. The city had debated for years, that was back when I was city attorney, for years and years and years, should we annex the south part going down that south side along 52. And the day finally came when the city did annex that. And then inevitably then the city upgraded its utilities, the water tower, the sewer plant, and the extended services down there. And it's a fact of life. It's not the city's fault, but when you own approximately 20 acres and you're annexed in, and the city runs sewer and water down your way, the city computes how many benefited lots you have, and the mall was just crushed financially with assessments. The mall had always presupposed, the supposition for the mall was there would be retail. And long story short, there's no retail, and there's no retail downtown. At the time, it was sort of a conflict. Would we be destroying our downtown because it would take retail from downtown to the mall? The mall used to have a shoe store, as I recall, but over the years, the mall has suffered the same fate as downtown, pretty much just service industries. So it's got Snap Fitness, the Chinese place. It does have Ace Hardware. And between Althoff's Hardware and Ace Hardware, those are our only true retail that we have really left in town, other than the food store. So he's had to switch gears, and over the years, in order to pay the assessment to the city, he's had to sell off part of the mall time after time after time. So O'Reilly bought a chunk, Ed Thomas bought a chunk for the car wash, where the Chinese restaurant, Country Kitchen, at the time bought a chunk, and that other store on the north end, and I always forget what it is, Country Store or something.
Oh, the gathering room? Something
No,
like that?
it's a separate building on north of Ace Hardware. Anyway,
Yeah.
he's had to sell those off just to pay the taxes. The good news, bad news is he's starting to get that bill down, and but the reality is, and he doesn't want to, it's not your problem either, and he doesn't want to cry in his soup, but it's very, very difficult for the mall to cash flow itself. And you just need to drive up and down highways and see abandoned strip malls and everything else. His plan B, if the mall fails, would be probably to ask the city to turn it into some sort of controlled storage facility, you know, indoors, convert the mall and so forth. To be very frank, he wanted me to share this with you, that if Ace Hardware bailed on him, that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Snap Fitness just enlarged greatly, but without getting into details, he just doesn't get a lot of rent out of these things. So he's been looking for innovative ways to try to increase traffic out there, increase income, to survive in his own self-interest. But he wanted me to tell you that he thinks it's in the city's best interest too, if he survives. If he can survive 5 more years, that's just 5 more years of paying taxes, getting that assessment further down, and so forth. And apparently one of the ways you can do that is this self-storage thing. Now, I know we got new units in Randolph. We got them up in Hampton. We've got several in Cannon Falls. But I understand that you can never have enough self-storage. People seem to want it. And so Ed asked his tenants and neighbors if they had any problem with it. He wrote the letter, obviously, but they all have said to him that no, it increases traffic out there. The more people out there, the better. Maybe somebody will come eat at the restaurant. Maybe somebody will go to Ace. I talked to one letter that's not in here. I talked to Luke Corman at the bank. He said the bank has no problem with it. There was an issue about fire trucks getting through, and one of the photos he has illustrates the width. It's my understanding that most of our city streets are about 24 feet in width, the bituminous, you know, and he's got still plenty of width even with a car parked there, not to say that they could go south between the units to get there. The units were located, the contractor was Todd Anderson, right, the ex-fire chief? If I'm not getting my Andersons mixed up, and you know, he thought the placement was appropriate for a fire truck to get to the restaurant out on the corner. I asked Ed, could they be located somewhere else and on his site? And the rub is, from his point of view, no. On the west side of the mall, behind the mall, the back door between the mall and Highway 52, that's where the Dollar truck and the Ace truck come to unload, and that just sort of takes up that area. It's possible it could go on the north side, but then he would have to ask Ace Hardware to take all its rental stuff and stuff that they rent out. If you've ever been out there on the parking lot on the north side of Ace, they've got a lot of stuff out there that they rent and so forth. And he didn't want to offend them because there's no other place perhaps for them to put that stuff. And it didn't seem to make sense to have it on the front of the mall as behind O'Reilly in that area, because that's a great area for parking. Snap Fitness and everybody else parks there. So if I'm reading the staff recommendation right, it seems to me that it falls within the parameters of the ordinance. It's on a blacktop surface. It's got good visibility, lighting, etc., protection. It's not in a residential zone. There's really no close neighbor by other than the mall itself and perhaps the Mexican restaurant, and those guys don't have a problem with it. Ed sees this as a little bit of further income that the mall can generate to help the mall survive. He has had the mall for sale for some years and hasn't found a buyer because it doesn't cash flow. That's just the plain truth. And this is his effort to try to get it to cash flow. Again, he thought, with what I started with, he already had some storage units in the back. He thought these, and according to Ed, I don't know if you Google it or whatnot, but this is the way storage units are now a lot of times, particularly in malls, where if the mall's going to go dark or whatnot, this is what they do rather than build a stick building, you know. So we don't see a fire safety concern. We think parking is adequate. I think it meets the technical requirements of the conditional use permit, and I think overall it's a win-win for the owner, but also for the city, because it just hopefully will keep his business going again. I was here some years ago for Ed when the city made the decision where the overpass was going to go. And he had me come again. He wasn't in town, and MnDOT sat here, Goodhue County sat here, and City Council sat here. And I asked him, who gets to decide where the overpass goes? And MnDOT said, well, the city does. But he sort of also said under his breath, if they don't put it where we want it, you might not get funding. And, you know, there was logic to have the overpass further south, you know, that benefited Mayo and all that, but there was logic to that, I guess. But it created some harm too. Kurt's Cannonball, as I head south on Old 52, my eye just isn't even drawn to the mall anymore. Unless it's Sunday before Altos was open, I'd go out to the Ace. That's a nice store and they got a lot of stuff. But I haven't been in the mall, inside the mall, for 15 years, and it's almost out of sight, out of mind. So the argument is it a win-win? I think it is, and I think the neighbors think it is too. I don't think it violates anything. The units are okay, you know. Would a building be better? I don't know, but this is apparently the economics of it. So he's asking you if I'm reading the staff report right, and if you have that, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the staff says they seem to hit the major bullet points of the ordinance, you know, blacktop surface, parking, this and that. And we're asking you to adopt the staff report and pass it on to the city council. If you had any questions, I'd answer them, but again, this is what Ed would have said had he been here. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I have a couple questions. I see that,
Is there anyone else who wants to speak
I'm
for
sorry.
the public
Yes,
hearing?
anyone else want to speak?
We're good. Okay.
Are we done?
Yeah, we can close the public hearing then.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing then for the conditional use permit. Well, I don't do this very often. And we'll move on to discussion item of the resolution 2019-1 of the conditional use permit Cannon Mall storage. So, anyone have anything they'd like to discuss?
Well, one of the things, it says it must be 25% open green space, which is seeded or sodded. To my as best as I can tell, it's 0% green space since it's on a parking lot. So, are we just going around that, or?
So the green space is for the entire site or for the entire property. So all of that acreage on the northwest side, that is green space. I think it's in some of the overhead views that we have.
Okay.
All of that space is enough to account for that requirement.
Okay.
And I have a question about the units themselves. Security, I've got some issues with security. I've also got issues with access in the winter. I see we've got was it 64th?
That was going to be my question too.
Yeah, we've got to be able to plow that, so where they're sitting now is right on it as I look at this.
I don't think it's a city street, gentlemen.
It's, what is it?
It's private property.
It shows 64th Avenue path.
Yeah, the city doesn't, it's part of the mall property. The city doesn't plow it. It's not a dedicated street.
Okay.
And somebody labeled it that,
Okay,
but
that
the
was-
city doesn't maintain it.
so, yeah, that was gonna be my biggest question, well, one of the questions I had. So, how many, if it's successful, how many, are you gonna fill up the whole space with this storage units?
No,
Could it
he's,
possibly be more than what we're looking at now?
and that's an interesting question. No, he has no intent now to do that.
Mm-hmm.
He has to see if this will work.
And,
That's an interesting question if you'd have to come back.
well, you're also gonna have, if you got a lot of snow, there people are gonna have to access these things too.
Yeah, I think
Double the
that'd
way
be a
in and out.
marketing.
That'll be his issue.
Yeah. that's
He's
right.
got a lot of room. As you look at the aerial photo,
Oh, yeah.
to the property to the south, he owns that big hole,
Yep.
And so he's got a lot of room to push snow, Snow on his property is not an issue.
Is it gonna require more security lighting just for safety's sake, people breaking into them or backing their cars into them or running into them?
It's,
Not familiar with how vault-like they are.
yeah, it's fairly well lit now. He could certainly install some more lighting, but as I drove by there tonight, you can
Yeah.
see it's not dark.
Yeah.
But I don't know specifically where those lights are.
I just, if opportunity presents itself, people will take advantage of those opportunities to get at it. A lot of those things are fenced in,
Well,
controlled that way with a fence.
yeah, a lot of this would be a marketing problem. If his customers couldn't get to the units, that's going to be his.
That's an
They
issue, yeah.
They won't be used then.
Yeah.
And these units, and again, I don't know much about them, but this easy storage is the management firm that he has. And these units are used all over the nation, I guess, and I think they're tough. I
It's
think
some-
they're harder to get into than
So that's
the wooden
that-
units.
something that might just turn up. I'm just thinking about what could possibly happen. If the mall itself does not thrive, are these units made to move inside the mall? Is that the idea?
Well, he may have to come back for that. His plan B, I mean, he just wanted to share this with you, that what would happen if the mall lost a tenant or two and it just didn't cash flow?
Yeah.
I mean, in the worst scenario, it would go for delinquent taxes and it would become eventually the city's property or the state's.
Oh, no question, you have to give them credit for thinking outside literally the box here to try to find
Yeah,
ways to
and
keep the cash flow.
I think what Ed mentioned to me is a plan B for strip malls or other malls that have gone dark is some climate-controlled storage, you know? So he could remodel the interior of the mall. Whether or not that would meet all the dictates of the planning ordinance, we might have to come back and share that with you. But I mean, to be very frank, if Ace leaves, there's not going to be another retail store that's going to come in there. No aspersions against our food market, but if we had a nice big food market come in there, that'd be sweet, you know.
That'd be nice.
But right now, the mall just cash flows itself, period. That's it. This is not, and that's why it's not marketable. It also sits on the old dump.
I don't
Yeah,
remember
but
that
don't
even.
mention, don't put that in the record.
I don't even remember
No,
that.
no new people know about that,
Yes,
Jim.
yes, and so I've known Ed for 20 years, and he was concerned when the state shut off access at Kurt's Cannonball. He was a bit concerned, especially for Country Kitchen at the time, and the Country Kitchen people who I knew well would tell you their business dropped dramatically, and that led them to almost bankruptcy. And the Mexican restaurant seems to be fighting that trend. The mall wasn't as dramatically in need of off 52 traffic, but there was a real psychology there when that went away. And there's lots of reasons why it did, but when that went away, we've got sort of, in my opinion, an economic dead zone out there. And I've been happy that that gas station has survived and Subway has survived, but those people have told me their business has dropped by 30%. And you can drive by on the freeway and see it, but I defy anybody to get to it off the freeway that doesn't know the roundabouts and everything else. It's just too hard.
Would have been nice if they'd given us at least a one-way exit off the freeway.
Yeah,
They
which
wouldn't
is a
even do
whole
that.
different story. And
Yeah. Oh, well,
So I'm excuse me, I'm just questioning what other storage facility owners in Cannon might be thinking about this, because it's not a building, they're not paying property taxes. Is that discussable tonight?
It's discussable. I have not heard anything, and
Yeah.
that Dave has not heard anything from any of the other owners. That's not to say they don't have an opinion. We haven't heard anything
But
from them.
I don't want to say, excuse me, I don't want to say what's in it for us. But I can say what's in it for us is, if that's what keeps his doors open down there, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe I'm not real excited about it, but if it conforms to everything, I guess. But if we limit it to units, a number of units,
And Steve, I don't think I can answer your question, but I would have think the assessor would take the that into account when they overvalue the property? Do you know, Sam, what they might do?
The assessor, I'm not sure what they're going to do. I know they have been questioning what to do. And I think they are kind of waiting for our approval at the city level to say that they can stay before they decide how much to tax those, or even if they're going to tax those.
Well, they won't be taxed as real estate that comes into our coffers. It'll be assessed like personal property, like
Yeah,
your
yeah, how
cars.
much to assess those, I should say.
So, in essence, we'll be getting the fee.
Well, I don't know, when you add value to property, I'd have to look into that, but Ed Reimer was under the assumption that his assessed value would go up for the value that this added to it. Yes, they're portable, but a lot of things are portable improvements that can be removed off real estate. And he fully understands that the assessor will raise his value by $100,000 or something, you know, equivalent to the cost of these units. And
Has he yet actively started marketing these yet?
no.
Okay. So there's none of them that are filled up as far as you know?
No, I don't, nobody's in them yet. I
Ready
mean,
to
he's
go.
ready to market them, but,
Yeah.
and he's hired a local couple to market them, but my understanding is there's nobody in it yet.
I think your point is well made, though. I mean, even if there is, if he's assessed more, at least we're talking some tax value to the city.
Well, we're here because we're supposed to be representing the city, and if all we're going to get is what, $500 for the permit?
$450.
$450.
I think
But-
part of the benefit is keeping the mall open and the business
agree.
in the mall
I
too.
agree.
So.
But you know what you see happen in a lot of empty buildings is they become non-taxable businesses. See that a lot.
Yeah, there's still outstanding assessments against the property for the 2000 or 2001 sewer and water project, you know?
Yeah.
So to me, it's in the city's interest if it can do something to keep it viable.
That money back.
And every year, so I sort of view it like every year that Grandpa hangs on before he dies is just a win for the city. And I think your role is more, is it an obnoxious something to its neighbors, you know? Is it something that, has it met the conditions of the ordinance, which I think it has? Has he done something quite wild or different than what's already out there? No, there's already storage units out there. And the neighborhood's not in objection. So I think the other storage unit people would just say, well, it's a bit more competition and it is what it is, you know. And but from the clients I've dealt with, I don't think we can have enough storage units because they're building them like crazy everywhere I go. I know the Randolph units are full and they all seem to be full.
Would they compete with a traditional storage unit business model? They look like they might be more limited capacity.
Well, yes and no. I think the capacity on some of these is fairly significant, you know, and a lot of when you drive by the others, you know, those are, what are they, 6 feet wide by 8 feet tall by 12 feet deep, you know, and so these, I think this would be a source. Yes, I think it would be some competition to them, but other places have outside storage for boats and motors and things like that this doesn't have, you know. But I think time will tell. I mean, if it's not economically feasible, this will just die on the vine. And he doesn't know either, but he's just trying to think of what he can do. He can't find other tenants. There's nothing left to sell out there in terms of lots, you know. There's just, nobody's going to buy another hunk of his property. And so this was just one of his ideas to try to keep some additional cash flow coming in to the mall.
Could we, if we made a motion to approve the conditional use permit, could we also include to limit it to the units that are there now or not?
Yes. What would happen if he wanted to expand is, since this is a conditional use permit, he would have to come back to amend the conditional use permit. So we'd know and have the ability to approve it, but I can definitely put in there as
Site
plan, however many units.
I count
35.
yeah.
35. It shall be limited to 35 units unless amended by Planning Commission and council approval.
And that's Ed Reimer's understanding, is to be ridiculous if he wanted to put 500 units in there, he'd have to come back and justify that or something. It's just what's there now.
The only other thing I can think of, and obviously the Rancho Loco is okay with it, but when you pull off 4th Street, you're heading down to Rancho Loco, the first thing you see is a bunch of white boxes.
Yeah.
And you wonder if that's the right route to get down to the restaurant. But if Rancho's...
I talked to those fellows, as did Ed, and they just thought anything to increase traffic and to get human bodies in the mall area, the better for them. If somebody had their storage things there, maybe it would dawn on them to go down and get a meal. Yeah. And of course, that concern, I don't know about the signage out there, you know, but that could be subject to zoning. There could be a better signage for Rancho Loco, you know. But as I observed it, you see Rancho Loco, but it's in about the worst spot there is for a restaurant. You can't get at it from the highway, and it's out of sight, out of mind. And I tell you, unless you know it's there, you're not going to go there. If you know it's there, you'll get there. But if you don't know it's there, you're not going to go, because you don't see it, period. And these storage things don't have much to do with that. It's just tucked away in a remote corner of Cannon Falls. And that was the heartache for that business of closing the access. That really hurt that business. That was a highway commercial restaurant. And if they did the same thing up in Hampton, they allowed Hampton to, if Little Oscars, if
And
you
it
could,
did on the other side of the,
yeah,
Took out
and Black Stallion,
Black
although I
Stallion.
see somebody's on the roof of Black Stallion.
well, it's
They're
probably the
doing-
bank trying to make it sellable.
Yeah.
Who
yeah,
knows?
yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion today on this? Want to move this on to the city council? Ready to make a
I'll make a motion to approve it.
motion to
To approve
Approve
the
it,
conditional use permit.
okay, by Witt,
I'll second.
seconded by Lundell. All approve, all opposed? Everybody approve?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so that takes care of A and B.
No.
Oh darn.
B is a different
got-
issue. We are still here.
We're still on B. Thank you, Jim.
Tomorrow.
It won't be on tomorrow because you can send me an email.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll move on to Exhibit B,
Yep.
mini self-storage facilities.
Or it's relocation of buildings.
And where are these buildings now?
Building relocation permits. Well, this item is being brought up after some of the items we had earlier this summer in regards to moving in homes. So for those of you that weren't here, which is over half my group here, we had a couple want to move in what would be considered a modular home into the city of Cannon Falls onto a vacant lot over the summer. The city code doesn't specify any differences between moving in a modular home versus a already used home that if you were to jack up and move it somewhere else. There's no difference between those. They were required to obtain a conditional use permit. And the process for them was quite tedious. It involved a lot of engineering requirements. There was some complaints from the neighborhood, things like that, all regarding a modular home, which is already up to building code standards and everything like that. It just comes in 2 to 4 pieces and is assembled on site. So tonight, I'm bringing this forward after some requests from Planning Commission and Council that if I could get a consensus from this group on whether we should amend the zoning ordinance to either define modular homes versus pre-used or already used homes, requiring a used home to get a conditional use permit, if we want to get rid of the conditional use permit requirement in general and just have it be an administrative thing internally. They would have to get a permit, or typically I did include some information from other surrounding cities. You typically have to get a permit just in order to drive a home down the road in most cities. So it would be an administrative permit. Or if we just want to keep it as it is and require a conditional use permit for all homes, no matter what type they are that are being brought into the city.
So you're saying simplify it to deal with the occurrence. Just deal
Yes.
with each occurrence.
Yeah, so simplify it to, instead of requiring a modular home, which has already had several inspections and nobody's lived in it, and it's assembled on site, they would have to go through the zoning requirements and everything for setbacks, things like that, but not requiring them to get a conditional use permit and come through Planning Commission and City Council to essentially treat them as if they were building a stick-built structure on a lot.
Yeah, I'm one of the ones that actually asked to have this brought up. To me, if you're building a new home, or you buy land, whether you build a stick-built house on site or you bring in a modular, you still need to follow all the permits, all the zoning, all the setbacks. But the way we have it now, we have 2 additional hoops that people have to jump through, one of which is come here with the public hearing, which can take a few weeks, to schedule. After that, another 2 weeks to a month to bring it to council. And to me, I just don't think that makes any sense. I think it's unnecessary hoops, considering that they still need to follow all the rules as if you were to build from the ground up. So that's why I asked.
Well, this is just basically a streamlining thing where there's still going to be the process. It just doesn't have to come through the Planning Commission and get balled up there.
So my question is, why wouldn't we do this?
Why wouldn't we?
Why wouldn't we do this?
I don't know. I needed consensus from the Planning Commission in order to change the ordinance. So,
What were some of the complaints by the neighbors?
So the wouldn'ts.
that the lot, it has been vacant for 30 some years, ever since this it was in the southern part of the city, kind of in the Cedar Hills area, since it was annexed and has been vacant. So it would be a change to the neighborhood. Drainage was a big issue due to the topography of the lot and everything. I think there were just several issues, but all of that would be addressed in a zoning review already, without it having to be brought up by the neighbors at a public hearing.
Yeah, the complaints weren't so much even about them bringing the house in. It was just building something in general.
They just wanted to make sure.
They
that-
wanted it to stay empty.
To fit into the, well, is that? Yeah,
No, they
that's
just wanted it to be
different.
empty.
Yeah, well,
That, but
they didn't own it, so.
you just got to make sure that the water flows away from everybody. And that was one of the issues they used.
Yep.
They wanted to make sure of that. But as far as no matter what you're going to put in there, it's got to pass all the tests anyway.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
I think I have my consensus.
You have your consensus.
Yeah, next
think
month
you do.
I will bring a retooled ordinance to the meeting for your approval.
Okay, so we'll finish all.
Will that come here first?
So any comments from the members here today?
Me first?
Welcome, Josh. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, Josh.
Yeah,
Favor, so I'm keeping track of them.
this will be interesting to hear everybody's input on what's going to be next in the city, and we get to be the first ones to hear what's coming up at the council, kind of. So it should be interesting.
Yep, we just clear it to the council. Sometimes they like it, and sometimes they don't. Depends on how many people sit in the audience, I think. Okay, well, we'll get to the last item on the agenda here, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Lundell moves and seconds, and so all opposed to that?
Right.
Oh,
All in
gotcha.
favor?
And all approve. Yep.
Aye.
Aye.